The rain battered my windshield, a relentless drum roll that matched the pounding in my chest. I was 17, a junior at Lincoln High, and tonight was supposed to be ordinary. Just a study session at my best friend Nate's house to cram for our chemistry midterm. But something about the way the storm churned the sky felt like a warning, a whisper that my life was about to veer off course. I pulled into Nate's driveway, the headlights of my beat-up Honda cutting through the downpour. His house, a modest two-story in a sleepy Oregon suburb, glowed warmly against the gray. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed with textbooks and half-eaten granola bars, and sprinted to the porch. The door swung open before I could knock, and there was Nate, all lanky limbs and messy blonde hair, grinning like he hadn't a care in the world. "Dude, you look like a drowned rat," he said, tossing me a towel. "Blame the sky for hating me," I shot back, drying my face. "My name's Ethan Carter, and I'd known Nate since we were kids stealing cookies from his mom's kitchen. He was my anchor, the guy who made high school bearable with his dumb jokes and unwavering loyalty. But tonight, as I stepped into the familiar warmth of his living room, my eyes snagged on someone else. Caleb, Nate's older brother, lounged on the couch, a book in his hands. At 21, he was everything Nate wasn't: quiet, intense, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like a winter lake, cold but deep. He'd just come back from his first year at college, and something about him had changed. He wasn't the gangly kid I remembered from 2 summers ago. His gaze flicked up, meeting mine for a heartbeat too long, and my stomach twisted in a way I couldn't name. "Ethan, you staying for dinner?" Caleb asked, his voice low, almost teasing. Maybe," I mumbled, my cheeks burning. I ducked my head, pretending to adjust my backpack. What was wrong with me? I'd seen Caleb 100 times before. He was just Nate's annoying brother who used to prank us with water balloons. But now, every glance felt like a spark, dangerous and alive. Nate dragged me upstairs to his room, where we spread out our notes on his cluttered desk. Chemistry was a nightmare. Balancing equations felt like wrestling a bear, but Nate's enthusiasm was infectious. "We got this, man," he said, scribbling a formula. "You, me, and a B+ minimum." I laughed, but my mind kept drifting to the living room, to Caleb, to the way his fingers turned the pages of his book with a kind of deliberate grace. I shook it off, forcing myself to focus, study, pass the test. That's why I was here, not to lose my mind over some fleeting glance. Hours passed, the rain easing into a soft patter. Nate's mom called us down for pizza, and we joined her and Caleb at the kitchen table. The air felt charged, like the calm before a lightning strike. Caleb sat across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table. I froze, my slice halfway to my mouth. Was it an accident? His face gave nothing away, but his eyes held mine again, steady and unreadable. "So, Ethan," his mom said, oblivious to the silent storm brewing, "how's school? Still planning to major in biology?" I nodded, fumbling for words. "Yeah, I think so. Maybe marine biology. I like the ocean." My voice sounded wrong, too tight. Caleb's lips twitched, like he knew something I didn't. After dinner, Nate got a call from his girlfriend, Mia, and vanished to his room to talk. His mom retreated to grade papers, leaving me and Caleb alone in the kitchen. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fridge. I started gathering my things, ready to bolt, when Caleb spoke. "You're different this year," he said, leaning against the counter. His voice was soft, but it hit like a punch. "Different how?" I asked, my heart racing. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. "You're not just Nate's shadow anymore. You're you." I didn't know what to say. My whole life, I'd been the quiet kid, the one who followed Nate's lead. But Caleb's words cracked something open inside me, something I'd buried deep. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was still the same Ethan. But the way he looked at me, like he saw every secret I'd ever hidden, made me wonder if he was right. The front door slammed, snapping us out of the moment. Nate bounded back in, oblivious. "Mia's freaking out about her history project," he said, rolling his eyes. "You ready to keep studying, Ethan?" "Yeah," I said, my voice barely steady. But as we climbed the stairs, I felt Caleb's gaze on my back, heavy as a touch. I didn't know what had just happened, but I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same. The next hour blurred by, my mind split between Nate's endless chatter about covalent bonds and the memory of Caleb's voice. "You're not just Nate's shadow anymore." What did that even mean? I tried to focus on the periodic table, but my thoughts kept circling back to the kitchen, to that moment when Caleb had stood too close, his words cutting through me like a blade through paper. Nate's room was a mess. Posters of indie bands peeling off the walls, clothes strewn across the floor, but it felt safe, familiar. I clung to that familiarity, desperate to shake off the unease Caleb had stirred. "You okay, man?" Nate asked, squinting at me over his notebook. "You're zoning out." "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Let's finish this chapter." But the truth was, I was drowning in questions I didn't dare ask. I'd always known I was different, that the way I felt about guys wasn't something I could say out loud. Not in a town like ours where people still whispered about those kinds behind closed doors. I'd spent years shoving those feelings down, convincing myself they were a phase, a mistake. But Caleb's gaze had ripped that lie apart. Around 10 p.m., Nate's mom poked her head in. "I'm heading to bed, boys. Don't stay up too late." She smiled, her eyes crinkling with warmth, and I envied how easy it was for her to exist in this house, unaware of the chaos brewing inside me. After she left, Nate yawned and stretched. "I'm beat. Want to crash here? You can take the guest room." I hesitated. The rain had stopped, and I could have driven home, but something held me back. Maybe it was the pull of Caleb's unanswered questions, or maybe I was just too tired to face the empty quiet of my own house. "Sure," I said. "I'll stay." Nate grinned. "Cool. I'm gonna call Mia again. Don't wait up." He disappeared, leaving me alone in the dimly lit hallway. The house was quiet now, save for the faint creak of floorboards settling. I grabbed my backpack and headed to the guest room, but as I passed Caleb's door, it opened. He stood there, wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. My mouth went dry. "Can't sleep?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Just heading to the guest room," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "You want to talk? About earlier?" My heart slammed against my ribs. "What's there to talk about?" I said too quickly. He stepped closer, closing the distance between us. The hallway felt impossibly small. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "you don't have to pretend with me." I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood frozen as he reached out, his fingers brushing my wrist. It was the lightest touch, but it burned through me, electric and terrifying. "I don't know what you mean," I said, but the words felt hollow. He didn't push, just gave me a small, sad smile. "You will," he said. Then he stepped back, disappearing into his room and closing the door softly behind him. I stumbled to the guest room, my mind a storm. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caleb's face, felt the ghost of his touch on my wrist. Around midnight, I gave up and crept downstairs for a glass of water. The kitchen was dark, but a faint glow spilled from the living room. Curious, I followed it. Caleb was there, sitting on the floor with a sketchbook. He was drawing, his pencil moving in quick, sure strokes. I didn't mean to stare, but the sketch, a city skyline under a fractured moon, was beautiful, raw. He looked up, catching me watching. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, setting the sketchbook aside. I shook my head, clutching my glass like a lifeline. What you said earlier, why did you say it? He stood, moving closer but keeping just enough distance to make me ache. Because I see you, Ethan. The real you. And I think you're scared to see it too. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the truth clawed at my throat. What if I am? I whispered. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he closed the gap, his hand finding mine. For a moment, we just stood there, hands clasped in the dark, the world outside forgotten. It was the most terrifying, exhilarating moment of my life. Then we heard footsteps. We sprang apart just as Nate appeared, rubbing his eyes. Yo, what are you guys doing up? Nothing, I said, my voice cracking. Caleb just shrugged, picking up his sketchbook like nothing had happened. But something had, and as I lay in the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew I couldn't unfeel it. Caleb had lit a spark, and whether it warmed me or burned me alive, I'd never be the same. Morning came too fast, sunlight slicing through the guest room curtains like an accusation. I hadn't slept, not really, just drifted in and out of restless dreams where Caleb's hand in mine felt like both salvation and ruin. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece myself back together before facing the world. Downstairs, Nate was already at the kitchen table, scarfing down cereal. You look like crap, he said cheerfully. Rough night. You could say that, I muttered, avoiding his eyes. I couldn't tell him about Caleb, about the way my world had tilted in the dark. Nate was my best friend, but he didn't know this part of me. No one did, not even me until last night. Caleb joined us, casual as ever, like he hadn't turned my life upside down. Morning, he said, grabbing an apple. His eyes flicked to mine, just for a second, and my pulse spiked. I hated how he could do that, unravel me with a glance. The day passed in a haze. Nate and I studied more, but my heart wasn't in it. Every time Caleb walked by, my skin prickled with awareness. By afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I told Nate I had to run home for a bit, promising to be back for our final cram session. The truth was, I needed air, space, anything to clear my head. I drove to the cliffs overlooking the Pacific, a place I'd always gone to think. The ocean roared below, wild and endless, mirroring the chaos inside me. I sat on the hood of my car, the wind biting my face, and let myself feel it. The fear, the longing, the truth I'd spent years running from. I was gay. The word felt like a stone in my chest, heavy but real. And Caleb, he'd seen it before I could admit it to myself. When I returned to Nate's, the house was quiet. His mom was at work, and Nate was out with Mia. I found Caleb in the backyard, sitting on a wooden bench under a sky bruised with dusk. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. You're back, he said simply. Yeah. I sat beside him, leaving a careful distance. I needed to think. About what? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I took a deep breath. About me. About this. I gestured between us, my hands shaking. I don't know what I'm doing, Caleb. I'm scared. He turned to face me, his eyes softening. You don't have to know everything right now, but you don't have to hide either. Not from me. His words broke something in me, a dam I'd built to keep the world out. I reached for his hand, tentative, and he met me halfway, his fingers warm and steady. For the first time, I didn't pull away. We sat there, hands clasped, as fireflies began to flicker in the growing dark. It was a moment of perfect, fragile peace. But peace doesn't last in a world that isn't ready for it. The back door slammed open, and Nate's voice cut through the quiet. Ethan? You out here? We dropped hands, but not fast enough. Nate stood frozen, his eyes darting between us. What the hell? He said, his voice sharp with confusion. Nate, It's not, I started, but he cut me off. Are you serious? You and Caleb? His face twisted, a mix of shock and something darker. Betrayal, maybe. He stormed back inside, the door slamming behind him. Caleb stood, his jaw tight. I'll talk to him. No, I said, grabbing his arm. I need to. He's my best friend. But as I followed Nate into the house, my stomach churned. I'd spent my whole life hiding, and now the truth was out, raw and exposed. Nate was pacing the living room, his hands in his hair. Ethan, what's going on? He demanded. Are you gay? The word hung in the air, sharp as a blade. I wanted to lie, to make it all go away, but Caleb's voice echoed in my head. You don't have to hide. So I didn't. Yeah, I said, my voice trembling but clear. I am. Nate stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then he shook his head and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the silence. I told the truth, but at what cost? The next few days were a blur of silence and avoidance. Nate didn't text, didn't call, didn't even look at me in the hallways at school. The absence of his usual grin, his easy banter, left a hole in my chest. I'd lost my best friend, and the weight of it crushed me. But worse was the fear that I'd lost myself too, that by admitting who I was, I'd given up the life I'd known. Caleb was different. He texted me that night a simple "you okay?" that I didn't know how to answer. I wanted to see him, to feel that spark again, but guilt and fear kept me away. What if Nate told someone? What if my parents found out? My dad, with his old-school views and quick temper, would never understand. My mom might try, but even she'd struggle. I was trapped between who I was and who I was supposed to be. By Wednesday, I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove to Nate's house after school, my heart pounding as I knocked. Caleb answered, his face lighting up for a split second before worry took over. Ethan, he said, stepping onto the porch. You shouldn't be here. Nate's still processing. I need to talk to him, I said, my voice raw. I can't lose him. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. He's in his room, but go easy. Okay? He's hurt. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Nate's door was closed, but I could hear music playing, some angsty indie band he loved. I knocked, and when he didn't answer, I pushed the door open. He was sprawled on his bed, staring at the ceiling. What do you want, Ethan? He said, not looking at me. To explain, I said, sitting on the edge of his desk. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. I didn't even know myself until recently. He sat up, his eyes hard. So what, you're gay now? And you're into my brother? That's messed up, man. It's not like I chose this. I snapped, then softened. Nate, you're my best friend. I didn't want to lie to you, but I was scared. I'm still scared. He looked away, his jaw tight. I don't get it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know how, I said. I didn't want you to look at me like you're looking at me now. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, I need time. Okay? This is a lot. I nodded, my throat tight. Okay. Back downstairs, Caleb was waiting. He didn't ask what happened, just pulled me into a hug. It was brief, but it grounded me, reminded me I wasn't alone. Give him time, he said. He'll come around. But time felt like a luxury I didn't have. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Fag. My stomach dropped. I didn't know who sent it, but the word cut deep, confirming every fear I'd ever had. I deleted it, but the damage was done. Someone knew. And in a small town like ours, secrets didn't stay buried. The next day at school, the whispers started. Kids I barely knew stared as I passed. A group of jocks snickered by the lockers, their words too low to catch but sharp enough to sting. I kept my head down, but the shame burned. Had Nate told someone? Or had someone else seen us in the backyard? I didn't know, and the not knowing was worse. Caleb found me at lunch, sitting alone in the library. You look like you're carrying the world, he said, sitting across from me. Someone knows, I said, my voice barely audible. I got a text last night. His face darkened. Show me. I did, and he cursed under his breath. This isn't your fault, Ethan. You don't deserve this. Maybe I do, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Maybe I should have kept it hidden. No, he said fiercely. You don't get to hide who you are. Not for them. Not for anyone. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back, glancing around the empty library. We can't. Not here. His eyes softened, but there was pain there too. I know, but I'm not going anywhere. That night, I lay awake, torn between the warmth of Caleb's words and the cold reality of my world. I wanted to be brave, to be the person he saw in me. But bravery felt like a luxury when the world was watching, waiting for me to fall. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of judgment that followed me through the school halls. By Friday, someone had scrawled fag on my locker in black marker. I scrubbed it off, my hands shaking, but the word lingered in my mind, a brand I couldn't erase. I didn't tell Caleb, he'd only worry, and I was tired of feeling like a burden. Nate still barely spoke to me, but I caught him watching me sometimes, his expression torn. I wanted to believe he'd come around, but the distance between us felt like a canyon. I missed him, missed the ease of our friendship, but I couldn't undo what I'd said. I didn't want to. Caleb became my anchor. We met in secret late-night drives, quiet moments in his car by the cliffs. Each touch, each whispered word, was a rebellion against the world that wanted to cage us. But the fear never left. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for another anonymous text. Every glance from a stranger felt like a threat. One night, as we sat in his car, the ocean crashing below, Caleb turned to me. I'm falling for you, Ethan, he said, his voice raw. And I know it's hard, but I want to face it with you. I wanted to say it back, to tell him he was the only thing keeping me sane. But the words stuck in my throat, choked by fear. What if it's too much? I asked. What if we can't do this? Then we try anyway, he said, his hand finding mine. Because you're worth it. His words carried me through the next week, even as the harassment worsened. A note slipped into my backpack, calling me names I couldn't repeat. A shove in the hallway, too quick to trace. I kept it from Caleb, not wanting to dim the light in his eyes. But the weight was crushing me. Then came the night that broke everything open. I was at Nate's again, not for studying but to try to mend things. He texted me to come over, a small olive branch. When I arrived, he was in the living room, alone. I'm trying, Ethan, he said, his voice strained. I don't get it, but I don't want to lose you either. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. The front door burst open, and my dad stormed in, his face red with rage. Someone had told him, maybe a neighbor, maybe a kid from school. Is it true? He roared. Are you like that? I froze, my heart in my throat. Nate stood, stepping between us. Mr. Carter, calm down. Stay out of this, Nate, my dad snapped. He grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the door. We're going home. Now. Caleb appeared, his face pale but resolute. Let him go, Mr. Carter. This is none of your business, my dad spat, but Caleb didn't back down. It is, he said, because I love him. The words hung in the air, a confession that silenced the room. My dad's grip loosened, and I pulled free, my heart pounding. Dad, I said, my voice shaking but steady, I'm gay. And I'm not ashamed. He stared at me, his anger crumbling into something sadder. Confusion, maybe, or fear. Then he turned and walked out, leaving me trembling in the aftermath. Nate looked at me, his eyes wide. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure. Caleb took my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. We'll figure it out, he whispered. In the weeks that followed, things didn't get easier, but they got clearer. My dad and I barely spoke, but my mom started asking questions, trying to understand. Nate came around, slowly, our friendship scarred but healing. The whispers at school didn't stop, but I learned to hold my head higher, bolstered by Caleb's unwavering presence. We were two young men in a world that wasn't always kind, but we had each other. And in the end, that was enough. The night I went to study at Nate's house had changed everything, not because of the storm or the study session, but because it was the night I chose to be myself. And in that choice, I found a love worth fighting for, a life worth living.